Hey, is it recording?
Yes, it's recording. Yay!
Awesome.
All right.
So let's hear about character developments. This is really good because I'm not good at character development. She's the
Oh.
best. So
Well,
go
I
for it.
learned a lot about plot from Ezra, so I bring character to the table. Cool.
Okay.
So I have 3 essential character tips for you in planning your novel. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. Grab pen and paper. Here we go. So the first tip is know what your character wants. That's super important. Stories are built on characters. What characters want, and we put things in their way so they can't get it easily, and then a resolution. Usually, hopefully, in genre fiction, we're going to have a happy resolution, but you don't actually have to have a happy ending. Of course, it's your story. So you need to have a goal. You need to have an external goal, something the main character is going after that is bigger than themselves. It needs to be enough of a challenge that you're going to have a story, and it needs to be appropriate for your genre. So I write in several genres. I write in fantasy and I also write in romance. So I'm working on a epic fantasy novel. I'm working on book 3. I have to make the goal in book 3 big. And it's okay to have a starter goal and then to have a larger goal. So the starter goal in book 3 is Henrietta needs to return a small boy to his mother who has been traveling with them. He's 6 years old, and that is her immediate first goal. But then there's a bigger goal in the story, which is that a war is coming, and she has to make a decision about leading an army because she's being asked to lead an army. So her goal is to figure out whether or not she should, and then, of course, how. Also, in your stories, you want to have an internal goal. You want to have something that the character wants. Maybe it's respect. Maybe it's admiration. Maybe it's to be loved or to love. Henrietta is not that much of a deep thinker, but she does want respect. And I would say that most importantly, she wants freedom. And so she has to also mix freedom with responsibility. And that's one of her big challenges. And I'll get to challenges in a moment. So once you know your story, your character's goal, then you need to know why. And this is actually one of my favorite kind of inquiry, and this you do in your prep work, is once you know what your character wants, you want to ask why. Why do you want this thing? And I find it best to actually interview my characters. So when I was reviewing this material for our call and for this recording, I was thinking about why does Henrietta want to return the boy? So here is a very important question to use when uncovering the why.
I love this question.
This is a great question. And this question comes from a study of how humans are motivated called neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. It's actually the study of how we grow and how we change and how we can achieve the kinds of goals that we want in life. So I studied this as a form of personal development and as a way to help my clients in my coaching business. I work with authors, as you know. And then, because it's so much fun, I applied it to my characters. It is so much fun.
It's great. It has nothing to do with nasty llama programming. That's something completely different. But neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah. So
Good
the
stuff.
key question to ask your characters is, once you decide what they would like, their goal is, what will having that do for you? And this is so much fun to actually interview your characters. I've done this a lot with my students and my clients. So in a writing exercise, put the goal down and then say, Henrietta, what will having that do for you? And as I was using this inquiry with Henrietta, asking her this question, I found out, she feels a sense of obligation. So then I ask again.
And that's key.
That's key. We keep going. Oh, you feel a sense of obligation. Well, once you have delivered the boy, then I guess that will be relieved, that sense of obligation. So again, what will having that do for you, delivering the boy? And then I uncover this this desire to no longer be treated like a mother, because this little boy is like hanging on this warrior woman who's 17 and mommy, mommy. And she's like, as much as she's grown attached to him, she doesn't want that responsibility. So she's driven by both a sense of obligation and a desire not to be responsible. So already we've got some interesting tensions, and those are inside of her. And in my story, I'm going to find some way to play those out. Then I keep asking, well, what will having that do for you once you are relieved of this pretend motherhood? And then I discover under that there's a sense of a belief about herself, where she tells herself, I could never be a mother. And now she is driven by almost a rejection of the possibility of ever being a mother. And I said, okay, what will having that do for you? And then I discover underneath a kind of sadness that she actually really would love to be a mother and would love to have a family. But because she's a warrior, doesn't think it's for her. It's almost like a rule she's made in her head about that.
Isn't that so cool? That's awesome.
So I've created all this very complicated, juicy material out of just asking that question again and again. What will having that do for you? And I'm just noticing what I notice. I'm allowing it to come up from my subconscious, where all our creative stories lie, and putting it on the page. And it sits there and mulls with all the other material that I use to develop my character. And when I get ready to actually write book 3, which I'm actually going to do during November of NaNoWriMo. So I'll be doing this class, my October class, right alongside everyone. The Preparing Your Novel for NaNoWriMo class.
And me too.
And Ezra, yep. And it's a wonderful, I want to say pressure cooker / container. So, okay, back on track. Character goal we talked about. We talked about motivation. And the third essential plot tip I want to talk about is conflict. Now, I'm going to approach conflict, though, in a little bit atypical way, because personally, I'm a character writer. But when I first encountered conflict as a writer, when people said to me, Beth, your characters, they're so sweet, but you have to make bad things happen to them. Otherwise, you don't have a story. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was when Ezra and I first met in the first writing group we were a part of together. Are you going to say something romantic?
I remember that.
Okay, he remembers that. That was like 16 years ago, you guys. It's wonderful. Okay, you're getting me off track.
Conflict. Yeah, we didn't have any conflict in those days. That was the problem. That's why we got together.
Right.
So we had to create conflict for our characters, and that helped.
Right. But we have a calm personal life, so then we can be genre writers and make really bad things happen to our characters. I mean, we had our stuff, but that's a whole other story. Gosh, you're getting me to reveal personal. All right, back to the way I approach character conflict. I have a hard time coming up with conflict that happens outside of my characters right off the bat. That's not the way my brain works. So through lots of trial and error, I discovered the exercise of asking my characters, what are you afraid of? And I actually used a list of 20. You should say, list of 20.
Oh, yeah, list of 20.
List of 20. Okay. We'll work on that. We'll get a button that says, list of 20.
List of 20.
So I use the list of 20. I set the timer for about 10 minutes. Usually 10 minutes is a good amount of time for this exercise. I've numbered my paper 1 through 20, and I just list all of the fears that my character has. And I just move the pen. It's okay if I repeat. It's okay if, there's no discernible order. I just write. What I have discovered in doing this exercise is that my brain organized these fears in order of sort of normal or obvious fears into deeper and bigger fears. Not always, but there's often a discernible pattern. Almost like, oh my God, the outline of a story. The first time I did this, I was flummoxed. I was beside myself. I was super happy and very surprised because I had discovered a way to create a story outline, something I had totally rejected and gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I can't outline. I'm a character writer. All that freak out that happens when we're first learning how to write. I discovered a way to structure a story, and that is through the character's fears. So, for example, as I'm mulling over book 3, that I will basically write most of it during Nano in November, I've been thinking about what are Henrietta's fears. And one of her fears is that she will lose Frank, her companion. And this is the first fear that it comes to me, because at the beginning of the story, they're traveling together. So it's kind of an obvious fear. Here's someone you deeply care about, and what if something bad happened to him? And right away, I thought, oh my God, that would be an amazing conflict. That could occupy a whole section, maybe even the whole of the third book. I don't know. I actually got really excited at that point, and I started thinking of what she would do and how things would become worse. And then I asked myself, what else is she afraid of? Well, she's afraid of, I don't know if she's afraid of being under the thumb of anyone in authority. But she has to ask someone in authority in this new territory for help. Great conflict, right? To help her find Frank. What else is she afraid of? She's afraid of looking stupid because she's a little smartass. Okay, so she's in this territory that she doesn't know. So that's perfect. Her environment right away, everything in her environment is going to be causing problems for her. Yeah. So you see how I'm stacking the problems, but all based on Henrietta's fears. The things she doesn't like, the things that she doesn't want to see people, she doesn't want people to see her as stupid. That's just juicy. Just those 3 things right there is super juicy. And I'm sure I can come up with more.
That's great. So whatever your character is afraid of, that's what goes in your story. It's awesome.
Yeah, and use it. And so there's a few presuppositions, which is a word from NLP. There's a few things that I am assuming for you. One is that you know your genre. Mm-hmm. You know the kinds of characters that fit in your genre. You know the general kinds of goals. You know what would be appropriate for motivating them, and you know their fears. So I'm going to show you guys the same goal, motivation, conflict using romance, because that's totally different from my epic fantasy. I still use paranormal and magical elements, but the scale of the story is a lot smaller. So I was daydreaming a new story today, a new Christmas elf story, and I thought of a character whose main goal is to please his father. He's a young man, but nothing he does in the elf world pleases his father. And his latest fiasco is just making like weird food in the kitchens. There's these group kitchens up there in my North Pole. Beautiful kitchens where there's the cooks, and then they feed the elves who make the toys. And so there he is having an apprenticeship because they don't know where else to put him, and he's just messing up the food, but he's doing it in a very creative way. He's like combining like cranberries and carrots and what else? Pistachios and maybe, I don't know, a little bit of ginger. Actually, that sounds kind of good. Licorice, crazy stuff. And then he's putting, instead of like green and red sprinkles, he's using like white and orange. These aren't Christmas colors. He's not making Christmas food. What is he doing? So his goal is to please his father, but he can't right away, right? So I've already set up conflict by his behavior, and I set up his goal. And some could say that pleasing one's father, pleasing a parent, is actually more of an inner goal. So this young man actually needs an outer goal. And in romance, outer goals can take all kinds of forms. And in this story, I'm daydreaming that he is going to make his way in the world. That is what he realizes he needs to do. And he has to pick a profession. He knows that he has to do that. So his goal is more out of a have to, out of a should. And that's okay to get a story started. It might evolve as I write, and I'm the kind of writer who likes my goals to evolve in a story like that, when someone's like finding themselves. What would be motivating him? Well, this is interesting. His goal is to please his father, and that is also what motivates him. So if I'm going to ask him, well, what will having that do for you once you please your father, then I might discover that once he pleases his father, he in his own imagination, the young man, thinks that he'll get like a golden ticket which basically says that he can go off and do whatever he wants. So then I say, well, what will having that do for you? And I discover what he really wants is freedom. Freedom to have a life however he would like it. But he doesn't quite know about himself at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
And then I could ask a little deeper just to see if there's anything there. Hey, what will having that do for you once you have freedom? And he just gets a big grin on his face. And he's like, then I'll be happy.
Yay!
And that's what we want in our romances. Of course, there's going to be a woman who comes in there and stirs the pot and makes things complicated and better than he could have ever expected. And then for conflicts, we already came up with a few. You know, he's messing up things for the elves, and he wants to get out of there. And because he's somebody who's driven by freedom, I'll probably give him conflicts that will restrict him in some way. And one of the conflicts is he's going to come into the human world where he's not allowed to reveal that he is a Santa's elf, and he has to hide his ears, and he cannot use magic. So those are some restrictions that are already built into my world. And he's afraid of not finding his path. So that's really fun, because what if I put a heroine into the story who absolutely knew her path? And then something would have to bring them together, maybe working in a cupcake factory, or no, not a factory, like a cupcake boutique restaurant. I have some ideas how to make that happen. And maybe she's his boss. Oh, I can't do a romance that way. I'll come up with something. See, so this is how I scenario plan. I come up with ideas, and then I test them in my own mind with other people. And if they don't work, that's okay. I move on to the next. Since that is our job as writers, to keep coming up with new ideas and then make them fit like a wonderful, complicated, and beautiful puzzle.
Cool. So notice that she listed goal, motivation, conflict, find these things. And when she talked about goal, she also added that you have an outer goal and an inner goal going on with the characters.
Yeah,
also.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And just as well, you also have an a driver for the outer goal, and you might have a little bit of a different motivation for the inner goal. Often they're intertwined. And the same with conflict. You're going to have inner conflict like doubt, worry, fear, and then you're going to have the outer manifestations of those conflicts. So that's another way of looking at goal, motivation, and conflict. And if you want a reference, I'm just going to mention it here. This notion of goal, motivation, and conflict was first taught to many writers, and myself included, from a wonderful book by the same name by Deb Dixon called GMC, Goal, Motivation, and Conflict, from Griffin Books for Writers. That's where you have to order the book. Great, so
Yay.
I think that's all the tips I have for you in terms of character and yeah.
List of 20.
List of 20, our favorite tool. All right, see you guys on the other side.
Bye.